to say I still have my suspicions about Mr. T, but I'm doing okay. And these are wild times. These are my reading glasses. I have trouble now that I'm an ancient fellow. I have trouble reading fine print, including my own handwriting. I don't wear glasses. I just need them to read. So I look professorial, and that's okay.
That's okay.
I gotta say, in
You're
general,
looking good, Jim.
I gotta
You're
say,
looking good.
in general,
Okay, in general.
yeah. Well, thanks. I thought about wearing a hair shirt for this, but maybe this is probably a little bit better.
It's a little bit more proper.
gotta
Hey,
say
Jim,
this-
just to warn you, before you start, Jim, just to warn you, we're still on YouTube for the first 5 minutes. Let's just cordially talk
understand.
about what's up with you in your life, what's going on. Happy to have you back. Why are you excited to be on the
Okay.
show?
All
And
right.
what's going on with the hat trick letter? What's new there with you?
Things are going well with the letter. I'm staying quite busy with a lot of consult calls, and I enjoy them very much. And there's a benefit to that. If I'm talking to, say, 3 or 4 people a week, sometimes 2, I get a glimpse of what's going on in Indiana and in Texas and in New Hampshire and in Virginia and in South Dakota, believe it or not, North Dakota. I got some scoop from North Dakota. I've had a few in Montana, Long Beach, the docks, the dock worker logistics. Okay, these are boots on the ground, and it's a really big advantage for me. Can you imagine what it would be like if you could arrange? Well, I want to get a good smattering. I want to talk to 8 different states and get an idea of what's going on in 8 different states and plan that. I don't have to plan it. It just comes from the consult calls, and it's very valuable. I've had easily 20 or 30 consult calls out of.
Oh, there's a bit of a lag. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Do you feel that the audience in your constant calls have changed in the last couple of years? Do you see a different caliber of people reaching out to you, or do you see a big change in the conversation?
A lot of people are worried about their funds. What do I do? I just sold a house. Things like that. I've got an IRA. I'm very concerned. It's stuck with a big financial conglomerate, and a lot of questions about, should I really be nervous? And I say, yeah, you should be nervous. So, and
sorry to break it to you, but yeah.
A lot of other questions like, Jim, do you find this like surreal like I do? And I say, yeah, probably more than you do. And they say everybody around them is worried. That's another theme. Everybody around them is worried. Everybody. I've got numerous examples of like married couples, and the wife doesn't see it like the husband does. Families where 2 or 3 of the kids dismiss the father because he doesn't buy into the regular narrative. The division. That's the theme. Division, confusion, worry, and they don't know what to do with their funds. A number of people have sold a property, and I thought, well, really, I'm glad for you, because it's not easy to sell a property. I've got 20 clients who've been unable to sell a property, even after dropping the price like 30%. And we'll get to those details later. But I'm noticing a general intense unease, malaise from my clients, and I've never had so many emails in my life. It's like 200 a day. And
it's the same here in the last little while. We're seeing more and more people asking questions. There's more people coming online. There's more people coming here to a Rumble channel who weren't here before, who haven't had the opportunity to hear you speak, and other guests and analysts. And they're realizing that they've been duped by the mainstream narrative. And so now they're asking questions. And like you said, they're very worried now. They're not sure what to do, and they're looking for guidance. Jim, before we get into it, you messaged me earlier this weekend. We wanted to share with the audience here the 20 reasons why this gold bull market would last at least 2 more years. I'm excited about that. Before we do that, let me just invite the audience that are watching us now.
I'm being conservative.
Absolutely. We'll get into that in just a moment. Before we do that, guys, please, if you're joining us here on YouTube, please move over to the Rumble feed here so that we can let Mr. Jim Willie speak off the cuff, as he normally does here, without triggering any censors here on YouTube. So I've put the link there, guys, down below. Please join us here in the next second or two. We are going to be terminating now the YouTube feed. Remove. Yes. Okay. So, Jim, just confirm. Yes. Okay. We are live now on Rumble only. Jim, let's start building the ground. Do you want to start with a preamble to this research, why you get to that, and then we'll get into the 20 reasons? How do you want to break this down for the audience here?
Let me give a preliminary, like a preface to the 20 very solid and powerful reasons why the gold market is going to endure a bull market. I'm telling you, this is going to be one for the history books. This is going to be at least 2.5, 3 years. Anytime the gold price comes down like 5%, if you don't jump on it, you're going to miss an opportunity, because it's going to go right back up and make new highs. I've got numerous reasons, and the first 5 are very powerful. The rest are very important. They're important, but they're not as powerful as the first. Let me give you a preface.
Right.
There are 2 important events that have happened recently. It's the debt, the U.S. government debt. I mean, this is not news. The U.S. government debt is now being announced, even by the St. Louis Fed, as unmanageable. And for those who don't know, the St. Louis Fed is the only Federal Reserve office where I could get a job. That's where the statisticians are. That's where the statistical analysts are. That's where the different financial models, the econometric models, are built and produce forecasts and analysis. St. Louis Fed. They are the best. The rest are kind of junky. I'm sorry. I just don't think they're very valuable at all. But the St. Louis Fed, when they say something, they mean it. When they talk about the money supply, they mean it. When they talk about money velocity, they mean it. When they talk about unsustainable debt, they mean it. What is the St. Louis Fed saying? They're saying it's going to default. They're saying it's going to wreck. There's an end of the road here. That's one event. The second big event is the threat of confiscating Russian assets. It just couldn't be any bigger. You don't go around and confiscate $340 billion worth of treasuries and other assets from the Russians, primarily in Swiss banks, to send it to Ukraine. You cannot do that and expect to continue selling treasury bonds. Our allies are now dumping. They don't want to get, I have my own little phrases, but I don't want to get racist, but, you know, we hear a lot of stories about the ghetto and, you know, little warlords in a ghetto area. And if you look at him sideways, he'll attack you. You can't even make eye contact. And if you do, you get attacked. Okay. Mm-hmm. I believe that our allies now are beginning to get intimidated, where they don't want to cross the U.S. government, because if they do, we might confiscate their assets. Okay, there's a threat that we're going to confiscate Chinese treasury bonds. Next, there's a threat that we might confiscate titles to many commercial properties owned by the Chinese. Okay, we are undermining our integrity and forcing our client bondholders to make a decision and I think they're going to be dumping treasuries, and it's going to get, it might become an avalanche, but we're not there yet. Okay, those are the two biggest reasons: the debt and confiscation of Russian assets. There are many, many more. We are about to see heavy-duty monetization of the government debt. Very heavy-duty. We're going to have refunding. By that I mean maturing bonds, like with a 10-year or a 7-year or a 5-year, and they're maturing this year. It's 8 trillion long maturity. 8 trillion. Okay, we made, when I say we, I don't mean me and my gang. I mean we, the United States government. I got to be very clear about that. I don't identify with this fascist regime, and it's all fake. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm just going to use United States as we. I'm a U.S. citizen, so when we have our government say something and cause a reaction out there in the global community of nations, it's us. It's us. It is a reflection on us. We permit that government to operate. We are about. We just had an exaggeration, and they called it a very successful bond issuance. It was only 25 billion, Jean-Claude. 25 billion. Okay, if we have the 8 trillion in long maturity coming due this year, and 2 trillion of other short-term maturities coming due this year, and the 2 trillion for new debt to finance this year. We got 12 trillion in 12 months. It's 1 trillion a year. So what's the big deal over 25 billion? What about the other 975 this month? Okay, that is what's being monetized. When you monetize the debt, you have a hidden underflow of too much money sloshing around. And, actually, I do hope they keep the bond market going. I do hope they keep the stock market going. And I do hope they keep the big banks. This is hard to even get the right words. Supplied with funny money, like with quiet FDIC funding during failures that they do not announce. We're going to get a lot of bank failures, and very few are going to be announced. I want to see a lot of money going into the banks to make sure that people can get their money out. A lot of money going into the stock market so that people's IRAs and 401ks don't crash and cave in. And that's a very unusual comment to make, because at the same time, Jean-Claude, if you have a lot of flush coming into the stock, bond, and banks, you're going to get a lot of money sloshing around in the economy. We're going to get price inflation. We're going to get something like what we had in 2021. That was when we had the supply shortages. And I think we're going to see over 10% in shadow government statistics, CPI. There was.
You just mentioned the. Hold on, Jim. You just mentioned the banking issues here. Sure. This was on Zero Hedge on May 9th. Billionaire real estate investors expect 1 to 2 bank failures a week. And UK economist says we're entering into this new dark age. The issue at the banking level here too, is that with respect to the bond market and their losses there, or is that because of the real estate as some are proposing, or perhaps even the silver shorts? Or all of the above? What's going on here at the banking level?
It's very little the silver shorts. It's mostly the bond market, the treasury bond market. We have not seen much change in the yield for the 10-year. And I read numerous articles 3, 4, 5 months ago that the typical bond portfolio for the Wall Street banks, those bonds are down 40%. Yeah. Okay, that is not recoverable. And furthermore, and they don't like talking about it because it exposes their own vulnerability and their own, I don't want to use the word corruption, but abuse of leverage. the bond market, the Treasury bond market, is considered the foundation. They have arbitrage versus that. They have trades versus the Treasuries. And so when the Treasuries go, which is 5 times their leverage of the Treasury, the whole thing falls apart. Okay, when they say their asset portfolio is down 840 billion, I think it's more like 2 trillion when you add the leverage. So they're lying. They're deceiving. They're only telling you what is required for their base. And other analysts, and I'm sure Rob Kirby would be all over this, like white on rice, but he's not here. He got murdered. He got murdered by remdesivir. All right. That was a nice, what do you call it, image, a metaphorical image of the burning houses, because those buildings are all insolvent. And let me, while I've got the thought, let me bring up what one of the rescue factors is going to be for these banks. BlackRock is going to come in and buy many properties, including some commercial properties. And we haven't had that publicized yet. They've done very little publicity, even of their residential properties, BlackRock. And when you hear about BlackRock and their property adventures, it's usually BlackRock is now moving in a different direction. They're building to rent. They're not building to sell. They're building to rent. And that means that you rent a big house and you pay a lot of money for it, but your landlord is BlackRock, and don't expect them to be friendly about anything. And don't even, if they've got railings on the front windows, they might lock you in your house by having an electronic system like a key card as opposed to a key card. Okay. There are lots of threats involved. Okay. Now I want to mention more about BlackRock. They cut their teeth in residential property acquisitions in 2009 following the Lehman event. 2009, 2010, 2011, they built their model in Arizona. They tested their model in Arizona foreclosed properties. And they've gone national since. And I got to say something controversial that I cannot prove, but I know in the darkest and deepest recesses of my heart, BlackRock is using narcotics money laundering funds to do the residential property purchases for their private equity firm. In addition to that, we've got Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google. They're also using narcotics funds. And round 2 is the MAT, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla. They're all using narcotics funds from Langley, which means that Langley controls the company, controls the policy, and controls the CEO. That's a very big concept that most people do not latch onto, and Switzerland is part of that. The Switzerland National Bank, Swiss National Bank, that's their central bank, is part of a 4-sided arbitrage. You probably heard that in 2000, and I think it was 12, they instituted the 120 euro peg because the Swiss franc was going up so much. The Swiss National Bank, their central bank, was buying the euros, and they had so many euros in their vault, they didn't know what to do with them. That's a figurative term in their computer banks. They didn't know what to do with them. So the United States got together with them and said, this is my theory. I'm putting things together, and I'm thinking like a criminal because these guys are criminals. We know that full well. The Swiss
went long bonds and short gold?
Exactly. But they went long bonds and long FANGMAT stocks. Okay. It was revealed that the Swiss National Bank had $1 trillion of U.S. stocks, and mainly the FANGs. They had a huge amount of Apple, a huge amount of Google, and they didn't really justified. They just said, here's what we have, and if you have questions about it, you go shit in the wind. All right, back to the big banks. They're in such incredible trouble that they are not in a position to get out of the trouble. If they begin to move to get out of the trouble, they force a treasury bond default. The concept is called convexity. I may have mentioned this before. If one big bank, we got, Chase Manhattan, JP Morgan Chase Manhattan, we got Citibank, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. If any of them begins selling a lot of treasury bonds and it's joined by another big bank, then we start to see 20 other mid-sized regional banks begin to sell treasury bonds, and we get over 6% in a matter of a week, unless the Fed comes in under instructions by the Department of Treasury to monetize it all. We'll buy it all. We'll buy it all. We don't want to wreck the bond market. Oh, golly. Word gets out, and even more of our allies start selling the treasury bonds, and it causes an avalanche. And it also causes a bank run. So we cannot have the big banks fix their problem. They're stuck.
Can I add something to that? Jim, you just mentioned BlackRock.
Sure. Pardon me.
No problem. And in the context of what you're saying here too, when you say they can't fix the problem, I don't know if maybe they're trying here. I saw this earlier today. Banks are now moving to repossess your home in order to monopolize the home rental market. So similar to BlackRock, it appears here, at least Lloyd's Bank is doing the same thing. So is that a way maybe to extricate themselves from the liquidity issues that they have, or is this just part of the big taking?
They would need 20, 30 million foreclosures. We're talking peanuts. You have to have millions of peanuts to make a big pile. And I don't think that's going to work, but it could be a method in order to supply BlackRock with the titles.
Maybe.
Okay, here's another angle to the BlackRock that people are not very aware of. Each migrant that comes across gets $1,300 a month for rent. And if you put 4 or 5 of them together, you got a house that's jam-packed with 6 migrants, say, and that's $9,000 a month, when the usual rent might be half that. So BlackRock might be confiscating titles, loading them up with migrants, and getting double the rent on your dime, on taxpayer, I don't like that term, taxpayer expense, on the federal budget. Okay, this is insane what's going on.
Check the prices here in Canada.
I got a comment
on... documents reveal that the federal government is paying unapproved immigrants $140 per night per room and roughly $84 per day for food. So $224 per day times 30 days. That eclipses what they're giving the migrants in the States. It's absolutely asinine.
Jean-Claude, I made a mistake. I said it was $1,500 a month. It's $150 a day.
Okay, so
it's $150 a day per migrant. It's about $4,000 per migrant per month, and you get 6 of them, and you get $24,000 for a house per month on the federal budget. I'm sorry for my error. I got so many numbers running around my head. It's $150 a night. And it's being paid by the Biden show. I never call it an administration because it's a fake administration. It's a regime. It's not even a regime, because a regime, like oh boy, this is definition. But if you steal an election and you have a bunch of puppets, I call it a show. If you don't even have the suburb, then it's a show. You got a stage. It's a show. It's not a regime. It's a show. In Venezuela, the Maduro regime is a regime because it's a power play. The Biden show is more like a television show deception.
Well, yeah, because if you have Donald Trump, who's the commander in chief, then what you have in the White House is a pretendency, not even a regime.
I like the lowercase p and the uppercase r, resident, p resident.
Right.
Okay, I gotta, let me make a couple closing comments about the banks.
Okay.
Janet Yellen made a comment sometime around in mid-April that they're preparing for one big Wall Street bank to fail. I think it was a bit of a trial balloon because they're going to have secret FDIC funding that is very, very large. I don't want to use the word unlimited, but very large at 2 a.m. to make sure that no big bank fails. Now, while that happens, we're going to have more restrictions for getting your money out of the big banks. I have had, of all the different people I've talked to, and this is an amazing number, I had 750 consult calls in the last 4 years. 750. And in the last couple of years, I probably had about a dozen people tell me that they're having an obstacle in removing their money. A dozen people. And over half of them are Bank of America. Therefore, if out of 12, like 7 are Bank of America, and that Bank of America is one of 5 Wall Street banks, then I think Bank of America is first on the list of failure. Okay, I'll give you this one particular story. A woman in the Northeast said, Jim, I did a bank wire of $25,000 out of Bank of America to, let's just say, a major coin dealer whose name you'd recognize immediately. $25,000 bank wire. Well, 3 weeks later, they had not received it. So I told the lady, tell your bank, Bank of America, that you want to nullify the bank wire, to put the money back into your bank so that you can remove the money as cash and do a different form of send to the coin dealer. And within 24 hours, the bank wire arrived. 24 hours, right away.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to do. Okay, if you're not going to do it, send it back because you're kiting the money. You're using the money for your liquidity shortages. That's what they're doing. Yeah. And she said, I did another bank wire a week later, and that went okay. I think I scared the shit out of them, Jimmy. I said, yeah, you could have. There are so many other factors regarding the banks. We could spend an hour on just the banks, but I want to just get the big points. We're probably going to see a couple of really big events, like our allies in Europe are going to get money under the table so they can bid on treasuries, and it does not show up on the tick report. It does not show up on the Belgium tick report, which means it comes right back the following week under the table. The other big factor is I think we're going to see possibly a bank failure and we'll be lied to. But then the adept analysts like Luongo and Alistair McLeod, they're going to be suspicious like good analysts are. Maybe they failed because their primary bond dealer's under contract to pick up all the unsold treasury bonds. Okay, that's my way of thinking. My way of thinking is look for the fraud because it's there, buddy. It is there. So the primary bond dealers are not just the big Wall Street banks. There's some secondary banks in there, and they're worried shitless that they're going to be forced to buy a couple $2 billion worth of treasuries, and they don't have the money. And maybe there will be an underestimation by the Fed for helping them out. And they're going to be calling them at 3 a.m. say, hey, look, we need 3 times that. Hurry up. Okay. The other thing about the Fed, people really need to understand this. The Fed is no longer owned by a bunch of trillionaires in Europe. The Federal Reserve is owned by Wall Street banks as shareholders. And JP Morgan has a 35% ownership. Therefore, they have the biggest vote. The Wall Street banks own and control the Federal Reserve. So just get it out of your mind. That entire pile gone. It's all gone. If they want at Wall Street to do something, they just make a phone call and they just do it. They don't have a board meeting with the Geneva crew that included Warburg and a few others. That's the only name I really remember right now off the top of my head. This bank situation is going to break. I think what's going to happen, Jean-Claude, is that there are going to be rumors and stories of rumors of bank failures, but no admitted bank failures, only the symptoms of bank failures, like it's difficult to get your money out and it's being rationed, like, well, sir, I'm sorry, you can only move out $5,000 a week. Okay, that's sort of rationing. And that's better than, I'm sorry, your money's gone, we did a bail-in. I got to mention this also. The Depository Trust Clearing Corp has been doing some rumbling, and you probably are on top of this a little better than I am. I read just a little bit about it, but I think they're doing trial balloons. I think they're trying to see if, well, does this shake up the banks? Does it shake up the brokerage houses? Does it shake up the government? Does it shake up the people? And, the people are the dumbest in the room. The dumbest in the room. It's really sad. Whatever the people are doing in a majority is generally the wrong thing. It's been that way for 50 years, as long as I can remember being an adult. I was an adult, Jean-Claude. I kind of had my baptism by fire. It was my senior year in college, and I was applying for graduate schools in statistics. And this is not a simple process for me because of my own personal situation, having to do with what my major was and shifting over to statistics. And, it was a big deal. During that time, we had the 1973 Arab oil embargo. At that time, we had the gigantic increase of oil and gasoline prices. At that time, we had 1 out of 5 gas stations that had no supply. And I was trying to figure out where I'm going to go for graduate school. And I almost got stuck. I borrowed my brother's car and I drove down to Tallahassee, Florida. And I don't want to mention what school it is, but I drove down to Tallahassee, Florida, where a reputable school wanted to talk to me, and I wanted to talk to them. I ended up not going there, but it was a really good school. I gotta tell you, Jean-Claude, I decided not to go to Tallahassee, Florida for graduate school because I thought that I just might end up playing tennis instead of going to class in January. So
Jim, if you didn't make it to your statistics university, you could always have taken up gender studies, and you would have been just fine. Jim, you were talking about banking failures. I wanted to bring up Cuba. This has been in the news in the last 2-3 weeks. We had rumors and inklings that the Cubans were having issues with ATMs. That's as far as we can see in the mainstream news. But today, there's a bunch of people reporting that the financial banking system in Cuba has completely collapsed. The Cubans woke to learn their bank accounts had been emptied and that there's no cash. Apparently here, in a bid to force them into this digital economy and perhaps this universal basic income here. You're in Latin America. Are you getting more news on this than perhaps we are here in the North? Because in mainstream news,
I'm getting nothing. The only news that I've gotten out of Cuba in the last 6 months is that is now the main money laundering for narcotics center in Latin America.
Wow.
Money laundering for narcotics.
Wow.
And for those liberal-minded morons out there who think that the Castro regime is like for the proletariat. No, they're running a slave state, and they've got gigantic Swiss bank accounts. I was told in 2001, when I went there for a week. I had a little bit of fun in the sun in January. No, it was the summertime. My brother was out of school, so it was like July, and I'm telling you, you go to a hotel, you ask the person who's doing the laundry, how much do you make a month? $40. I didn't say 40 a week. I didn't say 40 a day. I said 40 per month. You talk to the bartender. You ask him, what do you make per month? He says $40. You ask the receptionist, what do you make per month? He says $40. You ask the lady who comes in and grabs the laundry, what do you make per month? And she says $40. You ask the guy who's doing the lawn out front of the hotel, what do you make? He says $40. I think you get the idea. They make $40 a month. And the charge for the room is $100 a night, $140 a night if it's a bigger room. So somebody's making money. Who do you think is making money? You think it's the European investors, or do you think it's the Castro regime and the big family? It's the Castro regime, and they hand out some of the profit to the Europeans. How did I learn that? My brother got a couple of Europeans drunk. That's how I learned about it. My brother got them drunk on the second time they had dinner together. He said it was an Italian and a German multimillionaire developer. The first time they didn't want to talk about it, my brother bought them more Heinekens, and they started talking. And the next time they met, they didn't even remember what they told my brother. That was getting drunk. All right.
Going back to the Cuban regime.
Let me give you my opinion, because
we're sorry, there's a lag, Jim. I was trying to make a joke, but given the Cuban regime, do you think some of that money is coming to Mr. Castro here in Ottawa? What do you think?
I'm just going to give you my opinion, because I don't have a lot of information on this, Jean-Claude. Okay. I call you John mistakenly, and I'm very sorry, because it's Jean. I understand. My gut speculation is that there's some narcotics money interruption with Cuba.
Okay.
And they've used the bank accounts of citizens to do a bridge, to cover something missing, so that the Colombians don't get screwed.
You don't want a Colombian
necktie. Are you hearing me?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know.
Totally.
All right, there's more to this.
Okay.
A lot of people don't understand in the United States that the currency used in Cuba is the dollar. It is not the Cuban peso. It's the dollar. And it's been that way for 25 years or more. So if they've been using the dollar as their basis, do you think maybe they've had an interruption in their dollar supply? Do they have an interruption in U.S.-based or even Canadian-based? When I say U.S.-based tourism, I mean the American goes to Mexico and then goes to Cuba. The American goes to Toronto and then goes to Cuba, because the restrictions are in the United States, you can't go direct. I think they're having a tourism effect. I think they're having a narcotics interruption, money laundering effect. And I think they're having a general disconnect with their usual dollar conduit. I don't want to focus anymore on Cuba. Honestly, Jean-Claude, I don't know a lot
about the Bank of America then, because there's a couple of analysts in the last couple of days that were suggesting that if we hit the $30 mark in silver, we might see some big problems at the banking level, specifically those that are shorting silver. And one of them at the top of the list, apparently, was Bank of America. I did ask Andy Scheckman that today and Bill Holter yesterday, and they seem to agree that, yeah, BOA here could be at that level. And if I look at Kitco now, we're almost hitting the $30 per ounce silver. Talk about that here, the banking system involved in the shorts here, and how they can be in trouble.
Okay. Now, usually gold and silver are kind of hedges against debt default, and they're hedges against price inflation. Okay. Those are basics. Back in the summer of 2020, which is 4 years ago, Jean-Claude, 4 years ago, we were pushing 30. We have gone nowhere. We have gone nowhere with silver. And we have a lot more money in the system. We have a lot more price inflation in the system. We have a lot more debt in the system. There are three things. I mentioned only two of the three. It's debt in the system, it's money supply in the system, and it's price inflation. Back then, I got word from a fellow and he had, this is very unfortunate, but I don't want to reveal more than I'm permitted to from what I promised. He was operating in Switzerland, and there was a murder very close to his operations. There was a murder, and he had to be careful. And then he noticed that was tremendous interference with his company, and then he disappeared. He disappeared for 18 months, Jean-Claude. He was offering me information, and he vanished. And I thought there was a chance he might have been murdered, but he surfaced a few weeks ago to say, Jim, I'm okay. I had to lie low. There was more violence in and around my operations. Okay, this is a war, and people are being murdered. Okay, here's what he told me back in the summer of 2020. He said, Jim, I had dinner. Actually, it was more like drinks and dessert, like a piece of pie and a martini or whatever, with an old friend of mine at J.P. Morgan, Switzerland. Okay, the subsidiary, J.P. Morgan, Switzerland. Okay, so it's not J.P. Morgan U.S. headquarters and an office. No, it's the company, J.P. Morgan, Switzerland. And he spilled to my contact. He said, we're not going to give above 30 for silver. It's not going to happen this year in 2020. I just got a metal credit line of 200 million ounces of silver. I alone can prevent this from happening. Job. And I asked my contact, what's his reward? And he said, well, he has $1 million a year salary, and for that favor, he'll get $1 million bonus. Okay, so we went back down. We went to the low 20s. I call it hibernating in the low 20s. We were hibernating, and we were down there for 3 years. And what brought it back up, I think, was interference with the Ukraine money laundering. I think it's the arrival of the credit crisis, the imminent U.S. government debt default. And if you listen to some old tapes of Greenspan, Sir Alan Greenspan, who worked for the British Crown, he said we'll never have a debt default because we'll print money and cover the debt. Well, that sounds rather bravado, and it's not as easy to pull off as it sounds, because when they do that, they cause price inflation, and then they start limiting what they do that forces the price inflation, and then they realize that they don't have enough actual bond buyers out there, and then they might actually have to tap the Exchange Stabilization Fund. Oh boy. So
I was going to say at the beginning of the show, when you mentioned the FDIC backing up the banks, I'm like, the FDIC is underfunded to do that particular task. So where are they tapping into? And you just mentioned now the ESF.
No. That's not really accurate, Jean-Claude. No, okay. They have an underfunded account, and they have an unlimited credit line. They have an unlimited funding line. Gotcha. If they need $3 billion tonight, they'll get it tonight.
And do they get it from
hear about it.
The ESF? Okay.
They get it from the printing press. They get it from the Federal Reserve. They might get some from the ESF, but I don't really know. I think the New York Fed is in control of the printing press and the ESF. And you know what I mean? Move away from it, because that's what got Rob Kirby murdered. Mm-hmm. He was talking about it too much in unfortunate places that was regarded to put United States at risk.
Jim, we're 45 minutes in here. The FDIC
has...
Part of the thing we wanted to get through today is the 20 reasons why we're in this gold bull market here for at least 2 years, you said. You've mentioned the major reasons why at the beginning of the show. Can we also look at your understanding of the geopolitical system right now? It appears that I've heard a couple of truthers and researchers in the last week suggesting that somebody somewhere has decided to pull the plug on the economy, so to speak. That they want to hang that over Biden's neck. We kind of saw that atrocious interview on CNN just a couple of days ago, where CNN, for the first time, were giving Biden some real facts about his economic record and how little time he had before the election to turn it around. And then we had Trump come out saying, hey, he was willing to accept cryptos, and that if we wanted to live in a world where we could have the chance to decentralize cryptos, we needed to vote for him and not the Gensler and the Biden regime. Where do you put all this political stuff here in the mix? And do you see perhaps that switching right now of jumping on the bandwagon against Biden here, perhaps in a bid to replace him? How does that tie into the scenario here?
Well, let me make a prefatory remark that I believe that much of the Biden show is now under White Alliance control.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying now to bring Biden to a level of absurdity that is beyond credibility.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, we heard, and this is not necessarily the Biden show, but they're cousins to the Bidens. It was the climate change idiots. They actually said that wearing blue jeans contributes to global warming. Okay, this is the sort of nonsense, Jean-Claude, that is now coming to a head. But okay, that's my preface. There's going to be sabotage. There's actually going to be, I think, two rooms, two offices that are going to try to organize the sabotage. Let me start with the black hats, the cabal, the Biden show. They might try to engineer so much chaos that they cancel the elections and institute some level of martial law, or I don't know what exactly it might be, Jean-Claude. I do not know. But they just might say, hey, look, we're having a shortage of food. We're having some riots and burning and looting of food stores. The Walmarts are all closed. Okay, I'm just making stuff up. I don't know. Then you got, Food Lion and Publix and Kroger's and all these different food stores. They might be under attack in order to create the crisis to cancel the election. Now, that's an extreme. There might be something another motive from the White Hats. Let's allow the people to see how bad it's getting, and let's allow it to get a little worse, but not a lot worse. You know what I mean? Let's get it worse so that people wake up. It's like, let's not put people in a coma. Let's get them walking wounded. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm trying to use metaphors that people can understand. We don't want to have fatal car crashes. We want to have fender benders. Everybody getting a fender bender. Everybody on crutches. Everybody complaining, I can't afford what's going on. The food prices are up 50% in the last year. So I'm having to ration. I'm having to eat, rice and beans like the Latinos do, like the poor Latinos do. I actually have rice and beans sometimes because it's nutritious, and with the right sauce, it's kind of good, kind of tasty. But if you have it 6 days a week and you're poor, you end up hating it when you're 20 years old. Okay, I think they're going to do a sabotage and scuttle, but a near-death experience for the economy, and not take it to a coma and not take it to martial law. Not. And I believe...
Can I ask you about that? Because sure. I just had an interview with Carrie Cassidy yesterday, and she was also on the page that there's some weird stuff, and people are a little bit upset right now that this is going on too long. Some people are suggesting now that perhaps the move that Trump was making here, announcing that he was interested in crypto before the election, might be playing in the hands of the bad guys here in order to push us into the CBDC. And Kerry's thought was, well, maybe he has to deal with the bad guys here. And there's a you can't kill them all, is what she was saying here. So sometimes you have to deal and you have to make concessions. Are we going towards a world now where Trump, if and when reelected, gets us into somehow a type of CBDC or more control with the government? Or do you see a more decentralized financial system after these fender benders you're just talking about? Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, that's a pretty big question, Jean-Claude.
No, you're on the Beyond Mystic show. I'm not going to ask you
Okay.
what flavor of ice cream you like. That's for Joe Biden interviews. Okay.
Chocolate chip. I like lemon. Okay, let me just start at the top and work down.
Okay.
It's becoming clear to the best informed sources that Trump is now aligning himself with the cabal that's making a handshake across a fiery lake. That's how I look at it. Across a fiery lake, Trump is making a handshake with dangerous people. They realize that Biden is gone, so they're trying to compromise Trump. And I'm going to tell you my opinion, just my opinion, Jean-Claude. I think Trump is playing a very dangerous, courageous game of conning the cabal. He's playing them. He's probably going to say, we'll do your central bank digital currency. We'll support Israel to the end. We will, back off on the interdiction of narcotics. We'll support Bitcoin because it's used in the underground facilities. And when push comes to shove, down the road, there might be far fewer cabal captains that he has to deal with because they're getting cherry-picked one at a time, getting knocked out. I think we're going to have an event where the doubles are exposed, like Austin at Defense. We're going to see Criswell captured for FEMA in Switzerland. I think the original Austin was killed in Kiev in a missile strike. There are lots of different individuals. I don't want to get too caught up in the doubles issue, but Trump, I believe, is going to hang them out to dry and then be at risk, because I think they're saying to him, look, we'll stop the assassination attempts. We'll support you. We'll make sure you win this. We'll make sure the country doesn't get destroyed, but you have to give us this handshake across the fiery lake, and you have to promise to do certain things. And later, I think he's going to say, I cannot honor my promise. And I don't have the specifics, Jean-Claude.
Okay.
Can't do that. And let me give you one example, the CBDC. Basel, 2 years ago, had a little quick float. Yeah, Trump said CBDC will not happen. All right, well, fine. But he can make a handshake and say, I'll work toward making it happen, and then it won't happen because it can't happen. And here's why it can't. This is my opinion. It's based on some actual events. It was about 2 years ago, like in the middle of 22, Basel came out and said, we're going to come out with a CBDC and it'll be centralized because it must be managed effectively. And it cannot be transparent. And I'm telling you, it fell on its face in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And they never have mentioned it again. Now they're rolling out what they call the Basel CBDC, and they're claiming that they've got 12, 13 nations, 15 nations subscribing to it, aligning with it. And I say, bullshit. I don't think you got even 2. I don't think we're going to be able to see a centralized CBDC. If the United States has a CBDC, it'll probably be a close cousin or very tightly connected to Basel CBDC, and that will be centralized. And meanwhile, you'll have a CBDC. I don't even know how they would distinguish in China the digital yuan from a Chinese CBDC. How are they going to be different? You can't have the two operating. They've got to be joined. They've got to be together. They got to be operating in sync. Okay. I don't think the BRICS even are going to have a CBDC. I think they're going to be burning the dollar, dumping the treasuries. We've already got UAE central bank, the royals and Dubai, and it's the royals in Abu Dhabi and their market in Dubai. They've announced that they're going to expand their gold market 20-fold. Mm-hmm. They're going to be a supplier of gold to the BRICS. Mm-hmm. We've got a problem between the Biden show and Dubai. I should say the UAE Central Bank. The UAE Central Bank, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, the UAE Central Bank is in conflict right now with the Biden show. And here's why. They've let it be known that they're going to be the central clearinghouse for treasury bonds for the BRICS nations. Dump your treasuries with us. We got a connection and a back window door to the Department of Treasury. We'll take care of it all for you and buy your gold here. This is going to be powerful, powerful. Okay, now back to the CBDCs. I just don't think it's going to happen. I have to mention something. I just wrote a note down. We've not mentioned that home insurance in the United States has more than doubled and tripled for many locations. And in California, State Farm Insurance has evacuated California. Okay, so we have a very, very big housing problem. The people are getting worried. I have a couple of favorite people, one in Atlanta and one in Los Angeles. They each said the same thing. My home insurance has gone up from $1,200 a year to $5,000, and the other one said it's gone up from about $1,500 or $1,600 to $7,000 a year. They're trying to drive people out of their homes, and this is going to increase the level of angst, Jean-Claude, for the people. The people are going to say, I cannot live under the Democrat Party, whoever the fucking monkey is that they put in as a puppet. I can't live with the Democrats. I got to go to the Republicans. And the cabal is going to try to put some controls and straitjacket on Trump, and it won't work. And I got to throw something into the mix because we have not mentioned this at all, Jean-Claude.
Go ahead.
I think I'm being very honest and realistic here. I believe we are going to get to the point where Trump is the real Trump, the wrinkled Trump, the bad skin from stress, that Trump. He's going to be running things at the new White House. You should put side by side a haggard Trump and the Trump we see in public, because they're not the same one.
No,
I believe the double will be the agent that the cabal deals with, while the real one is running the White House. If you're going to play the cabal, how brilliant would it be to give them a fake Trump to talk to, and sooner it's just a matter of time before we see a news report. Hey, wait a minute. CNN reported that Trump was at a stump campaign in New Jersey, but he was also in at the Atlanta courtroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
How'd that happen?
And if you look closely, you'll see, I'm telling you, I've seen pictures, and it's not bad skin. It's just, he's showing the wear of the last 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stress,
this was just announced here earlier today as we went live. Yeah. This was just announced today as we went live. Biden and Trump agreed to 2 presidential debates. Yeah, that's interesting because just the other day, I was watching an interview. I think it was on Alex Jones, suggesting that the Democrats might actually want to flip, as Indiana Jones is doing here with the head of Gavin Newsom, Biden here before the end of the race. Do you hear scuttlebutt about that? Do you think he's going to make it to the election?
Yeah.
Or is this just a show? Yeah.
Okay, to begin with, that is the original Newsom. That is the original. Look at the teeth. Look closely at the teeth. Look closely at the very large uppers. That's the original. I got a side by side where the other guy does not look like that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The one sitting in Sacramento does not look like that. I've got a very large collection now. It's up to about 25 people, and it also includes Princess Diana. I'm just going to mention the new Princess Diana is the old Diana with some aging of 25 years. Okay, I'm going to tell you what I think might happen, and this is, the best of my ability. They're going to try to put some rules in for Trump regarding his latitude and length of time that he can respond. And I have a joke, just a joke. I like to exaggerate and have an effect. They're going to limit him to 7 words per answer.
Jim, in the last couple of minutes we have on the show, I know. In the last couple of minutes that we have on the show, I wanted to ask you. Wait, I got it. Wait. You didn't finish your joke?
No, I'm sorry. No, Biden might trip on his way to the podium and have an accident where he bloodies his head and shows that he's wearing a mask. This is going to be a wild adventure.
What happens if Biden shits his pants, literally speaking? Does Trump win the debate? So we need to give him some Depends diaper.
I think he's going to trip. I think he's going to get Trump's name wrong. I think it's going to be a wild, crazy show. All right, I interrupted you. So. What did you want to close with?
I think so too. I think, well, first of all, it'll be interesting to see if these debates actually occur and how they can actually put Biden out in a debate. And maybe they can prop him up with some drugs and put somebody in his ear. I don't know. We'll see. We started with this gold bull market in gold for the next 2-3 years. Silver, of course, is probably going to be like gold, but on steroids, as you said before. This was on May 8th, but not too far ago here. We're looking at these charts, these cup and handle formations in an environment where we're at now, where the Fed is about to print money here, like it's going out of style. This particular researcher is saying, hey, judging by this slide, and when we get into this third leg of the bull market here in gold, we can hit 20,000, and they're talking about $500 silver. What are your targets here in this bull market? You said 2 to 3 years. You said we might have pullbacks, but please do buy them as you see them, because you're not going to have the opportunity to go very much lower.
They're not going to last long.
Right. Where do you see these prices going?
The pullbacks are going to be bought by China and India. The pullbacks. Mm-hmm. In fact, we've got intraday pullbacks that are being bought back by the Americans and the Westerners because they're afraid of what might happen overnight. They're not allowing this to be sold off in a fake fashion with the naked shorts. Okay.
So far, yeah.
I put out an article and I displayed a $2,300 gold price as a target, and we hit it. It. But I'm going to tell you, I didn't get to my little silver point. Once we get over 30, because we did not in August and September 4 years ago. Once we get over 30, there is no resistance to 50. Now, a lot of people think, well, why 50? Well, it's part of a Fibonacci sequence, 10, 30, 50, 80, 10, 30, 50, 80, 130. But we had a little bit of activity in 2012 at 50. And in the traders' metaphoric language, they say we had a cup of coffee at 50 in the silver market. We're going to go to 50 quickly. We're not going to go to anything in between. We're not going to rest at 40. We're not going to rest at 38. We're not going to rest at 44. We're going to go from 30 to 32 to 34 to 37 to 38 to 42 to 50. It's going to be quick. Now, regarding gold, we're not done with the credit crisis. We're not done with the U.S. government debt problem. We're not done with the funding that has to be done for all the maturing bonds, long and short. We're going to have a lot of credit crisis problems. And every time one comes up, we're going to move up 10% with gold. But once I think we get toward 3,000, this is just my gut feeling, Jean-Claude. Once we get to 3,000, we're going to go to 5,000 quickly. Do you remember back in 1994 and 95 when we got to 2,000 on the Dow, and then we got to 3,000, and oh my gosh, how long will it take to get to 4,000? It got increasingly shorter time.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get to 3,000, there'll be a lot of conjecture. How long will it be to get to 4,000? It won't happen in 10 years, and it won't happen in, I think, 2 years. I think it'll happen a lot less than 2 years. Now, once we get to 5,000, that's going to be like down the road, 2 years, something like that, 2.5 years. I don't know. This credit crisis is not going to be an event where, oh gosh, we had a default announcement, and then 2 weeks later it's all over. Oh no. There's going to be an 18 months to 24-month event for the credit crisis and the bond default and the redemption at 65 cents on the dollar for foreign holders, and a lot of controversy and a lot of gold purchases by our allies and enemies and neutral states. But when we get to 5,000, this is my expectation. The central banks are going to announce that they must achieve a certain equilibrium. They must bring about mining operations back online in gold and silver, and they're going to execute by a dictate. They're going to execute that we go from 5 to 10,000 according to a schedule. And it won't be 10 years. Mm-hmm. The central banks will move us from 5 to 10,000. That's my expectation. Now, you showed the upper line on that trend line. Yeah, that could be down the road, 20, no doubt about it. But let me share with you something that Swiss contact told me back in the summer of 2020. He said the Euro Central Bank is hosting a conference every 2 weeks. It's not so much a conference as it is a luncheon. You know, you can order a lunch. There's a cafeteria. You can bring your brown bag. You can buy a martini at the bar. But it's like 150 people showed up every 2 weeks. It was a big success, hosted by the Euro Central Bank. And after they had several different meetings, they did a poll where people on a piece of paper put what they regarded to be an equilibrium gold price and an equilibrium silver price on a piece of paper like this. And they put it in a bowl, and they had 100 of them. And then they added them all up and averaged it, and they got 400 silver and 10,000 gold. That's what the audience of fund managers, options traders, futures traders, sovereign wealth managers, and just bank officers that were in the audience, 100 to 150 a week. And my guy said, Jim, it was well attended, and I know 2 people who were there every week. And then 3 months later, after the COVID packages for bankers, remember the 5 trillion, then the 4 trillion with the 18 months non-disclosure agreement? After that, they did it again. And they said 700 silver, 15,000 gold. Now, that's 20 to 25 to 1 on the ratio of gold to silver. My guy said, Jim, these are very realistic numbers. Think of it as we're going to find a way to get to 400 silver. We're going to find a way to get to 10,000 gold. And once we're there, there'll be new questions, new issues, like new demand for Tesla engineered projects, and I mean big projects. Can you imagine if we got a project to put Tesla coils, Tesla clips in like 50,000 neighborhoods?
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of silver.
That and
we need to open up Ecuador, Chile. We need to open up Ecuador, Chile, and Mexico. And right now we got Mexico. We haven't talked about Mexico. They're putting in a law now, and it's not completed. It's not ratified. It's to limit foreign investment in their mining industry. So that's backing out. What they're doing is they're saying, we want the silver to stay in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. And that doesn't even speak about...
That's an embargo. It's essentially an embargo.
Right. And on top of that, the
All
innovation
right.
boom that could come
Well,
out of the civil war we are facing now. Let me finish on that. I wanted to have your thoughts, Jim, on I don't know if you saw the movie The Civil War and if you saw the Napoleon movie. What's interesting in the Civil War movie, although they don't go straight out and tell you how the United States gets into a civil war, there's indications throughout the movie that at least a big part of the reason is an economic collapse. At one point, the press people are trying to buy gasoline for their car, and the gas attendant doesn't want to accept US dollars. He's looking for Canadian dollars. Can you imagine a world where Canadian dollars are worth more than US? But at the same point, they're trying to tell you here that there was an economic issue which led to the Civil War scenario. And what was interesting in the Napoleon movie that just came out here, this is by Ridley Scott, they focused a little bit of the movie in the aftermath of the guillotines. So after removing the royals, if you don't study history, you think, oh, everything was better because Marie Antoinette said to everybody, let them eat cake, and once we've cut her head off, everything went back to normal. That's not what happened. They focus here in this movie and the years of terror. I forget the French word they had in the movie, but this was a succession of governments trying to reboot, to come back together, get consensus, while still there was a lot of protesting people. Do you see that here moving forward for the United States in North America or worldwide as we get into this maybe world civil war, maybe 1.0?
Let me answer your question. I did not see the movie, and part of it was I didn't want to disturb my psyche. I should have done it as a research project, and I still might, but I have not yet. And I knew it was produced by the Obama clowns, so I figured it was going to probably be an ugly scenario. Bringing about an economic collapse is not going to be difficult. Preventing the economic collapse is the project that Trump must undertake.
Right.
If we have a lot of price inflation, then we're going to have to supply the households with sufficient money to manage the price inflation until we bring that inflation down. So we might have to do like household rebates, tax rebates, and other various methods.
And maybe including a handshake with the devil in there.
Jean-Claude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Okay, we might have the military taking over the Walmart supermarkets. Okay, there's a lot of things that they can do. We need to prevent the supermarkets from being raided, looted, and burned, because that is what I think the globalists like Gates and Schwab, if he's still around, I don't think he is, that's their goal. So if we don't bring in the National Guard to protect the most vulnerable elements, then we might possibly have close to a collapse. It will not be all that hard, but we've got to fight it. Okay, as for Napoleon, I've not seen it yet. I do want to see it. But let me make a comment about the post-Civil War. They called it the Reconstruction period. And during the Reconstruction, you had carpetbaggers. You had Northerners loaded with money in a makeshift suitcase that they called a carpet bag, because what they did was they folded a carpet and put a handle on it, and it was loaded with cash, and they went down south to buy the farms, like what happened with Gone with the Wind, with what's her face? I can't think of her name. I can't think of it was Clark Gable, but oh gosh, she was married 10 times. I can't think of her name. She had violet eyes. I can't think of her name. Anyway, the Atlanta burning resulted in a lot of farms that went bankrupt, and they were bought by carpetbaggers in the North. And it's not a surprise that in Atlanta you got a lot of Northerners. They call them Yankees and Crackers. And no, the Crackers are the Southern. The Yankees. I actually knew a few people who were Northerners living in Atlanta. Okay, the same thing probably happened for a longer extended period after the French Revolution, post-guillotine or guillotine. I I don't think we're going to get that bad in the United States. And I'll tell you my reasons, and some of them are not exactly logical. I believe we're going to see monumental efforts to prevent a collapse. I think we're going to see a role in the military. I was told by, I call him the Florida wingman. He's a military contact. He knows a number of people in the military in CENTCOM and other places. CENTCOM is in Tampa, Florida. And he said the White Alliance is debating right now whether they should have the military manage the vote counting in the battleground states where the big fraud was. They have not decided on that. I would like to see that in plain clothes, they have what would be called observers to monitor. And you can't close the door, and you can't shut the blinds, and you can't lock out the Republican element from the monitor crew. I think the military is going to play a role. I believe they're going to protect the food markets. We might actually see the government hand out food stamps to everybody, food stamps. The big issue, Jean-Claude, is going to be supply. It's not going to be money so much. It's going to be supply.
And supply management. Yeah.
Where we have interruptions to the food distribution, where we have more derailments, where we have more bridges knocked out, where we have entire trucking corporations declare bankruptcy, forced into bankruptcy. Some of the objective with the cabal is to raise the cost of everything so that nothing is profitable anymore. And that includes profitability for the household. The profit is savings. Households are digging into their savings and they're digging into their pensions like never before. Okay, I think we're going to rescue this, and I think we're going to have a very interesting 2025 where there's going to be a lot of, kumbaya, rally around your neighbors, and let's an awakening from the liberal retards. And let's face it, some of them are going to be gone because they're just too sick.
Right.
The widow from my New York, Vermont college roommate, my favorite roommate in college, he's dead, but his widow said, Jim, I know there are a lot of medical problems, but I'm really glad I got the vaccine. I'm really glad I got 2 boosters. I don't know if I'm going to have more. And I said, you're a fucking idiot, just like Bruce. And the same fate awaits you. It's called a cemetery.
It's coming up in the web.
Okay, they're not going to be around much more.
Yeah. I think Martin Armstrong's computer model is also picking up the Great Leaving, and so is Cliff High's WebBot data here, starting later this summer. Guys, in the last few minutes here,
what are you calling it? I'm missing the word.
The Great Leaving.
The Great what?
Leaving.
Oh, leaving. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, the Great
Hey guys,
Leaving.
before we leave,
the exit of the
today. Sorry, we have a lag here today, guys. Before we leave today, yes, if you guys are looking for some silver and some gold, please check out beyondmystic.net/silver. Thank you, Rodney, for the live link in the chat. A lot of people were asking yesterday after my interview with Bill Holter for the pre-65 dimes and quarters. They're available. I spoke to Andy again this morning here, around $275 over spot. Great deal. If you're looking for gold and silver here in Canada, please do go visit mfbullion.ca. And finally, before we leave, Jim, how can we support you here on golden-jackass.com?
Well, the main way is to subscribe to the newsletter. That provides me my base income that's reliable and scheduled, and I can depend on it. In January, I eliminated PayPal from the donate button. A lot of people contacted me and said, Jim, I'd donate, but I don't want to participate with PayPal. Neither did I, so I eliminated them. The consult button is there for people who have a number of questions that are very pressing, and I do the best I can. And I've had very, very few complaints. They go over very well. I did one this morning. I did one yesterday. They're very interesting for me. And if you're well-to-do, if you're wealthy and you've got an opportunity, hit the sponsor button. Help me out in a big way, because I am being damaged in a severe way. I don't want to get into a sob story, Jean-Claude, but I'm down over $1 million in personal losses in 7 years. From unusual events, 7 dead people, wrongful death lawsuits, car crashes, fatal car crashes, blown up septic tanks, 5 electrical fires, 12 collapsed roofs. These are not normal events. I call them 15 different 3 Sigma events. And let me just give you a quick napkin math. A 3 Sigma event is 1 in 200. If you have 3 of them, that's 1 in 8 million. If you have 6 of them, it's 1 in 64 trillion. I've had about 15. So the odds for all these nasty events happening to me, costing over $1 million in 7 years, in terms of days, would take us before the dinosaur age. In terms of days.
Incredible.
Okay,
Jim.
I'm telling you, yeah. I am talking about a lot of dangerous topics. Notice that really good analysts and my 2 of my favorite are Tom Luongo and Alistair McLeod. They never talk about money laundering effects. Mm-hmm. They never mention that Bank of America is called the Bush narco bank. They never mention Credit Suisse was vulnerable after the Russians smashed money laundering in Ukraine. I made a forecast that in 2 or 3, 4 months, Credit Suisse would collapse and enter failure. And they did in 2 months. And my reason was money laundering loss in Ukraine. Okay. How can you ignore $1 trillion a year in money laundering for narcotics and child trafficking? Well, they do. Everybody does. You probably do. I don't, and I get harmed.
I tread carefully around the subject matters. Yes. I've been deleted a few times already here on YouTube. Guys, please help me in supporting Jim and all of his amazing work. At the very least here, please do subscribe to the newsletter, chock full of information every month on how to navigate these crazy times. And of course, the brilliant analysis of Jim Willie is included. Guys, you can find and support Jim at golden-jackass.com. Join me again this evening for breaking moves at 8 o'clock Eastern on the Insider Access path here on Beyond Mystic. I love you guys. Have a great day. And thank you so much, Jim, for being on and sharing with our audience all of your amazing insights. I love you, man, and I can't wait to have you back on. Have a great day, Jim, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being on, and wait for the BRICS to invite Texas.
I'll have you back on. All right. Have a good day,
Thanks,
guys. Take care. Bye-bye.